Hello and thank you for joining me on Living History for a special announcement. We've got a few changes coming up which I wanted to share with you. It's nothing but good news, but it will mean a little bit of a restructure in the things that we're doing. Basically, we have so much amazing content coming out that I'm going to reshuffle a few things, including this podcast. So I'm actually going to pause the Living History podcast for a few months to focus on some of the other really exciting things we've got coming up. So it will be back later in the year, bigger and better than ever. But in the meantime, lots of other great content coming up, which I'd love you to join me in exploring. The first thing I've got to say is if you haven't checked out our new podcast, Battle Walks, then please do. This is something I'm absolutely loving doing. One of the most exciting things I've done in years. It's basically me and another great historian, Peter Smith, who lives in France on the battlefields of the Somme. And we walk the battlefields. We virtually walk the battlefields together, talking about the things that we can see and the things that you can do in the battlefields. It's really remarkable, especially in this time when we can't visit the battlefields. No one is able to get out and actually walk the ground. So I've been loving with Pete exploring those battlefields. And as much as I enjoy chatting about it, Pete is an absolute guru when it comes to this stuff. He's just got such wonderful insights into the battlefields that it's a huge pleasure to record this podcast with him every week. So please go and check that out. That's the first thing. So Battle Walks is available wherever you find your podcasts, wherever you're listening to this, or wherever you find your podcasts. I'm talking Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Google Podcasts, everywhere. Wherever you find a podcast, you will find Battle Walks. So please do check it out. It's a series I'm really enjoying producing. And of course, if you've been keeping up with everything we've been doing at Living History, you'll know all about the irrepressible Peter Hart and Gary Bain. And for the last year, we've been producing their outstanding podcast, which is Peter Harts Military History. But it's going through a rebrand now because I think you'll all agree that Gary Bain is an essential part of that team that brings a really interesting take on military history. And so Peter Hart's Military History will have a new name. It'll be rebranded. It's now going to be Pete and Gary's Military History, reflecting the duo, the unstoppable duo that is Peter and Gary. So do check that out as well wherever you get your podcasts. So for the time being, Peter Hart's Military History, soon to be Pete and Gary's Military History. Also, we're producing lots of great video content now, which I'm really proud of. And lots of great content is coming out on our YouTube channel. So go to Living History on YouTube and find lots of our videos for free. But also, I'm doing a lot of work now with the wonderful Dan Snow in the UK, a historian you probably all know very well, and his channel History Hit. So we're doing a lot of work together now and producing some really interesting documentaries. We've just done one on Sydney's convict origins. We've got ones on the bombing of Darwin coming up, Jack the Ripper, visits to the RAF Museum in London to see some amazing Battle of Britain aircraft. There's a whole host of documentaries I'm doing in conjunction with Dan. So check that out on historyhit.com. Now, History Hit is a subscription service. You do have to pay for access, but it's dirt cheap. It's literally dollars a month to get access to some of the best history content that is out there. So I thoroughly recommend you go over to historyhit.com, check that all out. Just some great content on there. In addition to all the digital content we're doing, we're also continuing our series of books. So hopefully you've bought Peter Hart's book, The Gallipoli Evacuation, which we published late last year. And there's a whole host of new and exciting ones coming up in 2021. So a book on Vietnam. We've got a book coming up about Operation Market Garden in Holland during the Second World War. Another book by Peter and Gary Bain, which will be exciting. That'll be out later in the year. But also I'm writing a book myself on the Cowra Breakout, the famous action that occurred in Australia in 1944 when 1,000 Japanese prisoners broke out of a prison camp in Cowra in New South Wales, and it turned into quite a massacre of those prisoners as they broke out. So just an incredible story, an emotional story. And I'm really enjoying the early stages of working on that book. So that'll be out probably next year, my book about the Cowra Breakout. So basically the summation of all of this is there's tons of great content coming out. And the simple fact is that I'm finding it difficult to juggle it all and to concentrate on the Living History podcast. So we're going to pause Living History for a little while, but please do jump on those other podcasts and check out that other great content. And I look forward to seeing you out there in the world of history.